All right. So welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Jody Stanislaw. I've had type 1 for 40 years, and I love to reach out to type 1s for education, support, and motivation. So today I'm interviewing author Sarah Joan, who is also a fellow type 1 for many decades, who has written a great book called Dealing with Pricks, which I think is so funny. I love that title. And we're just going to talk about her journey of living with type 1, what inspired her to write a book, and the lessons that she has learned along the way. And of course, the ups and downs that just come with living with type 1. So, Sarah, I am so glad to, yes. Now, I apologize, I should already know this, but is your first name Sarah Joan or is your last name Joan?
No, Joan is my middle name. So I don't, because I'm a school teacher, I'm a secondary school teacher, I don't go by my actual name on social media because my students can find me. So my middle name is Joan. I'm named after my grandmother. So, but Sarah's fine. That's my name. Yeah.
Okay. So we literally just met. So we've just kind of been conversing over email. And so Sarah, I really honor you for writing a book. I really honor everybody that's listening for living with type 1. It is definitely a full-time job. And I know we're going to dive into all the twists and turns that I know all of us can relate to when it comes to living with this complex condition. So Sarah, first, why don't you tell us a little bit about, how old were you when you got diagnosed and what it was like at the beginning?
Okay. So I was 2 months shy of my 10th birthday. And again, sorry, I'm going to be that person because it's in the book. And sorry for those of you who've read it and you think I know this already. I was really quite ill, and I'd been losing weight, like the typical diabetes story, really. And I remember feeling quite ill and having a really bad stomachache and feeling sick, and it was a very quick onset. Because on the day I was diagnosed, I was in bed and I was in ketoacidosis. Basically, I was panting off ketones, and my nan, who is my namesake, that's who I'm named after in my middle name, she made my mum call the doctor, and the doctor came and did a home visit, and he basically said to my mum, tell her to stop being over dramatic. She's having a panic attack. She's being really dramatic. Tell her to pull herself together. And what he was referring to is the fact that I was panting and I was breathing off ketones. It was involuntary, but he reckoned I was having a panic attack. So he took a urine sample and went back to the GP surgery. Then about an hour later, he called my mum and said, she needs to go to hospital now. Don't wait for an ambulance. She'll be dead on arrival.
Oh my God.
So it was incredibly traumatic. And then I was rushed into A&E, to the emergency room. I was put in intensive care for a couple of days. I was hooked up to an IV with insulin. I was pretty much out of it. And I wrote about this in the book. There was a guy in cardiac arrest, the next kind of booth with the curtain separating us. And as a not yet 10-year-old, that was really quite scary.
Yeah, sure.
And I woke up and my mum had been sent home to get, just get some bits and pieces together because she knew I was going to be admitted to hospital. And I remember being really confused and saying, I want my mum, and trying to get out of bed and not understanding that I had a catheter attached to me and that I had, why were all these wires over me? So, that was, it was quite dramatic and very fast. And if I'd waited for the ambulance, I wouldn't be here talking to you today, basically.
Well, we're glad you are.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
I know everybody's story can be pretty intense, and that's definitely a pretty dramatic one. So I honor you for making it through that. And that's one thing that I like to pull out all the time is I really trust that life is here to give us opportunities for growth and strength. And I think clearly that you are a sign of that. From, I'm sure, all the benefits that you get to share with the children that are lucky enough to be in your classroom and things, and I always want to point that out, whenever we hear a story that's just like kind of heart-wrenching, to remember the opposite side of that. And that is strengthening. I don't want to just wallow in the, as you, we'll get into with your book, but, it's one thing to wallow in like an honor, I should say, the struggle. But then I always want to make sure we get to the next step and just really honor the strength that gave you.
Absolutely. And I know that in the kind of final chapter of my book, I do talk about it having defined me, that I don't actually know who I would be without diabetes. I turned 43 in April, and so I would have been diabetic for 33 years, and as a type 1, I don't know who I am without it. So I think you're right, like acknowledging that and knowing that that was incredibly traumatic, but so it had a defining moment in my life, but it doesn't define who I am now. I've been able to kind of grow from that and learn from that. So I think that is really important.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I want to get to the question of what you know, what moved you to write a book, but you know, that's many years forward from what you just shared. So are there key events or life lessons that that you want to make sure you, well, I suppose, why don't we just go to, you know, what is it that moved you to write the book, and then we'll uncover your life as we discuss the book.
I think really the simple answer is that I've always wanted to write. My mum even said to me, she remembers me being at secondary school. So I was in year 7, so I was 11 when I went to secondary school, aged 11. And I've always been into kind of creative writing. I've always liked drama. I'm a drama teacher now.
Okay.
So kind of that artistic flair. I've always been into creative writing. I've always written poetry, which again, it might sound a bit kind of very artsy, but even for people's birthdays, my thing is I write birthday poems for them. So I've always had that kind of desire. And I've started a couple of novels, actually, fiction. And I felt I ran out of steam. So I've got 2 sat on my hard drive that I've been brave enough to show to people. But I almost ran out of what to say. And then I thought, I want to write. And when we had obviously COVID and with the lockdown, that changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And I'd been partway through running the group Diabetes and the Low Carb Life, where I posted weekly Sunday musings. I'm not religious, and you know, there's no judgment there against people who are or aren't. I made this kind of thing of like on a Sunday, I'd just post the thoughts in my head and my musings. And then people really liked them and were saying, this resonates with me. I understand this. I kind of appreciate what you're saying. And from that, I then went, well, if I wrote a book, if I wrote about all the rubbish in my life, all the silliness that's in my head, would any of you guys want to read it? And it was a really resounding yes. And I thought, oh, really? Okay, I better put my money where my mouth is and I better do it. So it was really because of the group members saying that, yeah, we would read your story. And there was that element of, look, I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody. And I don't mean that in a kind of self-deprecating way. It's just I'm a diabetic. There are millions of us across the globe. We all have a really important story. And I think once I got over that, well, who really cares? I just thought, I'm going to write it. I'm just going to say my journey. And I did. And I just started really from I suppose, where, you know, when I was diagnosed. And then I wrote through the various chapters of my life, quite literally in the book. The various chapters chart different occasions, and it went off on a bit of a tangent, because those of you who have read the book understand that I've had a problem with my weight for my whole life. I was a serial dieter. I'm thankfully now a recovering dieter. I'm a former dieter in recovery. I don't have food issues. I don't have disordered eating anymore. I feel like the book was really cathartic because it was a proof that I'd put a lot of those things to bed, and I dealt with a lot of things. I write about abuse in the book. You know, I was a victim of childhood abuse. Lots of people are, and I although the book was never about that, and it was never going to be about that, but I had to acknowledge it and say that yes, because this forms a part of my whole makeup, and it would have formed decisions I made in my life, but that wasn't the crux of that particular story at that particular time. So I think it was just a combination of these things, and so many people in my group have contacted me and either shared and said, me too, actually, this really resonated because I understand where you're coming from, or they had a similar story about the dieting, or they had a similar story about the food issues, or they had a similar story about kind of relationships or friendships or school, or the way they felt with a hypo. And it just I think it really reassured me that we are absolutely all connected, and we can feel very insular and very alone, but actually we are totally connected by our manky pankies, as I affectionately term it, you know, by our broken pancreas. So yeah, that was kind of really the driving force behind the book.
Well, what a gift, and you know, what a service. And I think telling stories has been, you know, that's the way we pass down history and lessons for eons. You know, who knows when pen and paper were invented, but relatively recently. There's so much power in stories, and when you're willing to share it, it's powerful. It's very powerful. And for whatever reason, you know, you decided to write it. And yet I always believe in a bigger purpose and a bigger reason. And, you know, our little human mind thinks, well, who wants to read the story? But I believe there's definitely something bigger moving through you to just impact the countless people that you've impacted with your story. I think we all need each other to, we need leaders to stand up and have the courage to be vulnerable. You know, there's that great TED Talk by Brene Brown. It's one of the most watched TED Talks. I think it has like 24 million views. If you guys haven't seen it, just Google Brene Brown vulnerability on YouTube. And she is I think she's like a researcher of human behavior. And she was looking at, you know, what creates connection. And she also was very focused as a researcher on making sure everything looks good and functions well, and 1 + 1 = 2, and you know, she dresses well and everything. And she found one of the number one things that really creates connection in community is sharing our vulnerabilities. And she talked about how terrifying that was for her, but yet how if you're not willing to share the vulnerability, it can create a very lonely life. You know, it's ironic, right? Because we're trying to all look like we have it together, and we've all, you know, every day is a great day, and I'm just going to post my happy day on Facebook, and everybody's going to think I've got my life together. But yet that actually creates such heartbreak, right? Sometimes for people that are like, well, I don't feel like I have it together, you know. And it's the opposite of when you're like, you know what, I had an eating disorder, I had disordered eating, you know, it's just really beautiful when people have the courage to be real and honest. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. And I do think it's that vulnerability. And I think for me, it was about breaking the stigma of shame. And I don't just mean about kind of childhood abuse. I mean, you know, shame around my disease, that I'm different. I wasn't like my peers as a child growing up. I had this thing, I refer to it as my passenger in the book. It was not a term I actually ever used until last year, when I was doing one of my training sessions with my members of my low carb group, and trying to just, again, anecdotally, because I'm, as I mentioned to you, Jodie, before we started, I'm not qualified. I'm not a medical professional. I don't have training. In the book I reference, I even dropped out of St. John's Ambulance, which is our voluntary first aid system here, when I was a teenager. But actually what I've got is life experience as a lived diabetic. So it was, I think I had a lot of shame around my disease, my difference, my disability, however you want to term it. And I think it was about empowering myself and taking ownership. Like, I've struggled with my self-esteem my whole life, as many people have. That's not unique to me. And taking ownership of it and saying, actually, I'm a pretty okay person. I'm okay, and I've got lots of positive things about me, and I want to recognize it and acknowledge it. Is so empowering, because it stopped me feeling like a victim or being victimized. And my mindset is totally, like, I can't even verbalize how much of a different person I am now compared to 2 years. And I credit that to low carbing. 1st of January 2019 is the day my life changed forever. And that's because I decided to low carb. And that sounds ridiculous, I think, to maybe those who either aren't diabetic or haven't had those struggles. But it was fundamentally down to me saying, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I was so used to feeling ill every day as a diabetic. And again, I reference this in the book. well, of course we feel ill. We're diabetic. We've got out of control blood sugars. We go hyper. When we exercise, that causes us problems. So I'm going to avoid that because that's really challenging and difficult. So I'd spent my whole life kind of dodging things and excusing, I can't do that because I can't eat that, or I must eat that, and because it's diabetes. And I just got so sick of it. I got fed up of living like that. And I just thought, no, I can't do this anymore. So that was the real changing point. And my biggest regret, or my only regret, is not doing it sooner.
Ah.
That's the only regret I have, because it got to me, 2019, 1st of January. That's when Sarah Joan appeared. That's when she kind of was born or baptized, or and it's and all that. And I can't regret the past, because every step leads you to the journey now. Every step leads you to this moment where you're currently at. So I have to be thankful for that. And I've always felt like that. But yeah, it was just a total change.
I so appreciate that you shared that, and that is part of your journey. I share your sentiments exactly, that we can live vibrant lives and we can eat anything we want. And it's a choice to choose low carb, because then we have less highs and we have less lows. It's that simple. You take less insulin, you need less, you have less chance of high because you're eating low carb, and you have less chance of low because you're taking smaller doses. And, I know we all feel the same of like, and that is not what is taught.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I've never had these conversations with my consultant, my specialist, who he's a pump specialist. So I went through pediatrics, when I was a kid, and I was on injections. I've been through it all. My favorite moment was a nurse at my GP surgery. I have to go for these reviews. It's part of their tick box exercise that they have to do, because obviously with the NHS, to get their funding, they have to do these things. And a nurse said to me, right, I'm doing your diabetes review. And I said, okay, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I'm on a pump, so I don't think you've had that pump training. And she went, oh, what's a pump? And she had no idea. Or what does it do? And I was like, what does it do? It keeps me alive, is what it does. And it was so shocking, because I thought, wow, if I didn't have the empowerment of the knowledge and the education that I've lived, and the fact I can read, so I've done a bit of research myself, I'd be placing my trust in this woman who fundamentally was there to look after type 2s and tell them, don't eat cake. Like, genuinely, that was the level of the education and the instruction from the medical profession. And I was like, well, what is going on? So that really spurred me on to creating Diabetes and the Low Carb Life. And again, that fed into the training sessions, into the book, and it just all kind of came together, because there is a gap in the market. There's, as in this knowledge, I despair when I speak to newly diagnosed members on my group, who's, especially during the pandemic, they've been to their GP. Oh, you're type 2. Right, what does that mean? Oh, well, don't eat carbohydrates. And some people are there saying, I don't understand what carbohydrates are, because if you don't know, you don't know. If you've never had to know, you've never had to find out. So why would you know something? So they've been sent away and gone, oh, I don't think I can eat biscuits. And they've not, I can't have a cookie, I can't have ice cream, I can't have a piece of cake. And that's it. That's kind of where their education has stopped. And I feel like, banging my head against a wall, really, because I just think there's so much more. And I'm really getting on my soapbox now, I'm really sorry, but I feel that type 2 treatment, especially in the UK, is reactive instead of proactive. They are actively telling type 2s to not check their blood sugar, just rely on the HbA1c. But obviously, as we know, I used to cheat my HbA1c as a teenager. I knew I was seeing my doctor in a month, so I'd deliberately run myself hypo to change my average, because I understood how it worked as a teenager. And I was not a great teenager. I was, a bit of a rebel. So I didn't care about what my blood sugar was doing. But type 2s, if they were given that blood testing machine, or they were encouraged, well, why don't you check your blood sugar at various times? They wouldn't then need these amputations. They wouldn't then need to go and see an eye doctor because they're losing their sight. They wouldn't need that. So I think my passion has grown. I was very much in the camp of, oh, type 2, you're so different from type 1. Whereas I've been educated by my group members, where I understand that diabetes is so unique as it is prevalent. We are all different. So what affects me as a type 1 will not affect another type 1 in my group in the same way. Yet there are shared experiences that we can learn from. And there are shared shared things that we can put across to each other to say, well, this worked for me, it might work for you, this might not. Be aware of this. And so I think that's kind of the key, you know, the fundamental thing. And I just think the lack of education, sorry, I've really gone on a rant about my political voice tonight, but it's this lack of education and understanding that I just think globally needs to change. And thanks to people like you know, people like yourself and kind of the pioneers in the world of diabetes who are saying, this is not okay, this needs to change, because effectively the advice we've been given for years potentially killing us early. So let's not do that anymore, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, spot on. I share. That's why I've literally dedicated my career to educating type 1s around the world. That is because, and you know, I have patients all over the globe, and it's the same everywhere. You know, eat whatever you want, take more insulin, and then the lack of education to even know how to manage all the 100 other variables that affect blood sugar, you know. So my passion in my membership course, many people here are in my membership program, and you know, with my online courses is, you know, I feel like type 1s have gotten about 25% of the textbook, and yet we want to get an A+. And so if you've been given 25% of the textbook and you're trying to get an A, you're going to give up. You're going to feel like you're an absolute failure. You're going to have burnout and be like, what's the point? Even when I try, I'm still high and low. So forget it. And that's so widespread. And so I thank you too. Like anybody that can share this next level journey. And the next level journey comes from a place of heart and education and experience. And that's what's lacking so much. And my goal is to reach as many type 1s as I can, you know, with support, education, inspiration, motivation. I do, you know, my members here know, you know, we meet for 30 minutes once a week. And, you know, my analogy is kind of like, it's your weekly tune-up, you know, like it's our weekly gym appointment, you know, because everything that we need to take care of in our life needs attention. And so also when you live with type 1, it can be so lonely. And so this also gives that community just that touch point once a week, you know. And I, on a kind of a tangent, I've been dealing a lot with the word alone and feeling alone. And I have my Aunt Mary, who has just changed my life. She's a spiritual teacher, actually. And she goes, look, when you really spend time, I'm addressing people that feel alone with their diabetes that are listening right now. I know there's a lot of people on the recording as well, but when we feel alone, you know, spiritual teachers say that we're never alone. And sometimes that's a trite phrase that I don't understand, but if you look at the word, it says also all one. We're all one. And I love plays on words like that. And so my goal with, you know, having a meeting like this with you and being vulnerable and sharing our story is that we realize that we all are together, that whatever feeling of like, this isn't working for me, I feel lonely, I'm scared, guess what? We're all at times feeling that way. And just the knowing, like I said about, and thank you, Doug, for sharing Brene Brown's link to her TED Talk, just the knowing of the realness of our journey is healing itself without even doing anything, just sharing, connecting, and knowing that we're not alone, that we're all
completely
in this together.
It's that reassurance, isn't it? Because you know, it's that analogy of you can be alone in a crowded room, that I think when you're dealing with diabetes or dealing with pricks, you have that moment of like, yeah, but do you really understand? You know, I reference my husband in the book, not much because he wasn't very forthcoming with me writing about him, but thankfully he is very understanding. But what used to annoy me is if I ever snapped at him when we were together in our early days, he'd say, are you hypo? And the annoying thing was 9 times out of 10, he'd be right. And I was hypo. Now, if I get angry at him, he knows I hypo very seldomly. So I'm just annoyed with him because he's put me in a bad mood. But it is that idea that you just don't get it. And I think it's that connection. It's completely what you've said. It's that connection with other people where somebody just gets it on a level that you know they truly understand. And I think in terms of the reviews I've seen, which I've been very grateful. So if any of your group members don't mind leaving a review on Amazon, I just think it helps it reach other people who might need it. And thank you to those people who have already. That was what was important about writing it. I mean, look, you know, hands up, I'm never going to make a career out of this. I'm a self-published author. You earn pennies on it. You know, it's Amazon. I'm not J.K. Rowling. I can't exactly sail off into the sunset and buy a yacht. But it was never about that. I knew I was writing a book. It was my story. And I wanted it desperately to resonate with other people.
Beautiful.
Because
beautiful.
that was the crux. That was all that mattered. So for me, it's about reaching people. That's why I put it onto Kindle Unlimited, because if you've got Kindle Unlimited, you can download it for free. You know, you don't even need to buy it. You can just download it for free if you have access to that. So that was more important than, you know, kind of making a couple of pounds here and there. I think the impact it's had on some people who've messaged me has just been so humbling. That, you know, you've made this your career. I'm very envious. I'd love that to be my career, but I don't know if I fully have the credentials that you have, shall we say. But what a difference, you know, what a difference you are offering to people, and throwing them the lifeline and the lifeboat, and letting them know that, hey, I'm here and it's okay, and you aren't drowning. You're waving, not drowning. It's fine. And I just feel that in some way, I'd like to hope that my book has been part of that, in terms of, for some people who've managed to access it, that they may have felt a little bit like that they're not out there wandering around thinking, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're so lucky to be in this age of, you know, Zoom. I remember growing up, I was diagnosed in 1980. You know, what connection did I have going to the doctor every 3 months, which eventually felt empty, and I stopped doing that. And then my diabetes camp friend, Missy, and who I still wish to this day I could find her. I don't know where she is anymore, but I'd see her once a year, you know, for a week, and that was about it, you know. So I want to touch on what you said in terms of, you know, I love to educate people on how to set your basal rate and how to, you know, properly dose at meal times and how to avoid lows. But in terms of education, we're talking about how much is lacking. Well, number one, they're not even getting that education, number one, right? And number two, right here, what we're doing is almost even more important sometimes. The connection and the vulnerability, and you're in this together. Because if you don't have this part and you don't feel comforted and you don't have a place of motivation and inspiration, who cares what your basal rate is? You're not going to care. You're like, it's too much, you know. So what this meeting is, and I honor all of you for being here, right? It's an investment. It's investment in your health. It's prioritizing your self-care. It's prioritizing honoring, you know, your needs to connect. And it's almost maybe more important than like, how are you gonna dose for that? You know? Yeah. There was I was a very, you know, straight A kind of student kid. I wanted to do well in everything. And I, you know, I started binging on food behind closed doors, I think when I was 10 or so, because I couldn't let anybody know that, you know, my A+ was actually had a backdoor activity going on. So I silently binged for many years. And one day, I don't know I have no idea how old I was, but, you know, I did start going to therapy. I eventually went to an eating disorder rehab center, but that was late. That was, I don't know. I think I was 28 when I went, and I started binging when I was like 10. But I saw the name. So I obviously reached out for some help with my eating disorder, but I don't know if it was many years after my diagnosis, I heard of Dr. William Polanski, and he runs the Diabetes Behavioral Institute. And he is like, I address the emotional needs of type 1s. And I was like, where have you been my whole life? It was the first time that sentence was even, because all the therapy I had through the years was because I had an eating disorder. Type 1 was just, I'm a type 1. So, okay, I'm having this eating disorder. I go to eating disorder therapy. And I literally don't know when I first saw it. I mean, it had to have been when the internet came out, because I'm sure I didn't just randomly hear his name at a restaurant. So I just started crying. I said, there's somebody talking about this. There's somebody talking about the emotional impact of diabetes. It blew my mind. It's so important.
I think, do you know, that is it. And I think that's the overwhelming message I get from my group, in that they will say, I'm asking in here because I get, you guys get it and you guys support. And it's that emotional support is so crucial.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can only speak from a UK perspective, because where we get, God bless the NHS, we get the NHS, and you kind of get who you're given, and we don't have that necessarily exactly the same choice, because we're not paying for it unless we want to go private. But I don't think I've ever had a specialist or a consultant say to me, how are you feeling though? It's always been, well, how's your blood sugars? What's your control? What's this? What's that? Nobody ever stopped to ask me how I was doing.
Yes.
And I think that's it. I think that compounds so much about what people feel like, and why so many people get either burnout or they resent their diabetes, because it's not person-centered. It's not, I'm a person who has diabetes. It's right, let's talk about your diabetes. Well, hang on a minute, I'm a person first. I have an identity first. I just happen to have a dead pancreas inside me. So, can we maybe not address that first? That would be quite nice. And I think that's where my group inadvertently almost address that in a way, by recognizing and accepting the person first.
Beautifully.
And going, you are a person who happens to have this.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the sole kind of descriptor of who you are. It doesn't define you. You have it, but it doesn't have to completely define who you are. And exactly as you said, if you're not feeling emotionally secure and emotionally nurtured and happy, you're not going to care what you're going to bolus or basal. You're just like, so what? Who cares? And that's so lacking, and it's so dangerous, and it's so worrying, because people are suffering.
Absolutely. And on that note, we need to have this struggle honored, and this, like, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I have an eating disorder, honored. But the other thing that we need to have honored, and that's my goal with my membership program, is, like you say, you're a freaking superhero, right? We are superheroes. I remember one day I was getting my eyes dilated at some random doctor that I had never seen before. And I this was, I'd had diabetes for at least 30 years, I think. And, I'm like good little Jody, trying to do everything perfectly all the time. And I just keep going. And I somehow have some inherent natural keep going. But he dilated my eyes, and he goes, I've never seen such healthy eyes in a diabetic in my entire career. And he goes, how long have you had type 1? And I was like, 30 years or whatever. He goes, I can't even see. If you didn't tell me that you had diabetes, I just started bawling. Somebody acknowledged me. Somebody acknowledged how hard I'd worked. And nobody ever acknowledged that either. They're like, okay, Jody says, this has got to take your sugar cubes with you. Okay, take your shot now. Okay, now you got to measure your bread and weigh your bread and where's the measuring cup? Okay, oh, you're high, go for a little run, and so it's both sides, isn't it? It's like we need to acknowledge that this is hard, and that we're not alone, but we also need to acknowledge, you guys, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great, so you call it a passenger. I call it my child. Like this child, I have my little diaper bag with, like, my glucose tabs in it and my CGM, and, you got to bring your diaper bag everywhere you go. And it's you might not sleep sometimes. The baby might wake you up, the CGM's beeping at you. And so it's so important to honor both sides, our challenges and our successes, and have that be at the foundation, and then education. Right?
Absolutely. And yeah, you're spot on, because I think we're very good at kind of just going, oh yeah, but that's what we do, you know, because that's how it is. And you're right, because when I used the word superheroes, because I was like, gosh, I'm keeping myself alive because my pancreas won't. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty
Yeah.
good, actually. How many of you guys are doing that? Not, you don't have to. And you're absolutely spot on. Like every day, sometimes just getting out of bed is enough. Like just getting your feet out of bed and standing up is the biggest kind of achievement of the day, because it's been hard, because you've been awake. I mean, last night my CGM was beeping at me. My Libre 2 was just going crazy because I was going high randomly. I was asleep. I was doing nothing other than sleeping. And then I get a little alert. So I put some insulin in through my pump, and and that's fine. And then it's happy again. But I think people just don't get that. We don't sleep. I'm up peeing like about 4 or 5 times because I'm on a certain medication that, because I've got double diabetes. So I'm type 1, my pancreas is dead, but I have the characteristics of a type 2 because I'm insulin resistant as well. So one medication my endo put me on, he was like, look, it's only for type 2s, but I'm a maverick, so I'm going to put you on it. It's really helped my blood sugar control, but I have to constantly drink water. So as a result, I might be up 4 or 5 times a night. Like that's where I get my steps in and my activity, because I'm walking back and forward to the bathroom. And people, I call them normal people, and I don't mean that an offensive term in any way, shape or form. It's kind of like my little joke to myself. But normal people don't get that. I call them muggles or non-manky pankies. Muggles just don't get it. They just have no freaking clue what we go through on a daily battle. So yeah, we should be high-fiving ourselves. Without a doubt.
Beautiful. And that brings my point up to about, yes, this community is great. And this community is type 1s. We all have it, right? Your loved ones can love you. Your doctor can love you. Your nurse can love you. But there's something missing in our care when we don't get this conversation, right? When we don't get like, I totally get it. I totally get it. You know, it feels really good to be witnessed and understood. I mean, in all aspects of life, right? So that's one point I wanted to make. And then the second one was what you were talking about. I did about the, I am a person first. I initially, when I started my online business about 10 years ago, I kind of came out into the world by doing a telesummit. So I interviewed Dr. Bernstein, I interviewed Sebastian Sasseville, who ran across Canada with type 1, and I interviewed some college diabetes network people, and I just interviewed all these wonderful people. And I was so excited to step out in the world and make my dream come true of helping type 1s. And that's how I grew my email list and got my name out there. And I made a little private Facebook page for the telesummit. And some person just started ripping on me. And she's like, who is this Dr. Jody? Is she even a doctor? She uses the word diabetic. She goes, that is horrible. We are not diabetics. My point is, it was traumatizing, but I absolutely agree with her. And I try my best to never use that word anymore, to say, we are people with diabetes, and diabetic is like, and I can't remember if this was her or someone else that pointed this out. They're like, you don't call yourself, or people with cancer, you don't like identify them as they're a canceric, or people with heart disease, they're a heart-ic, diabetic is so like owning it and like as if that's what you are, right? And so I really, although some people are like roll their eyes at like the semantics of it, but I really honor, even when I'm typing and I'm blogging and I'm, doing everything, I try the best I can to never use that word, because I get it. I get her point. I totally, and I appreciate, I can't remember, obviously I'm not in connecting with her anymore. She was some woman in, I don't know, the Midwest or something. But she was so upset because I was using that word, and I got her point. We are people. We're people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and again, it totally, and you were right, like it's the semantics, and I totally respect that. For me, and I think it's a personal choice, I personally don't have a problem being referred to as a diabetic. And I think because I'm secure in that it just doesn't define me.
Oh,
but I
sure.
think you have to come, you have to have it's a lot more complex than that, as we know with diabetes. Of course it is. I make a joke with my members when someone says, oh, I've had really bad blood sugar this day or whatever. And I've said, have you tried this? Have you done this? And we all give advice. And then I just say, oh, it could be because the wind blew, or it could be because the day ends in the letter Y. Like, actually, oh, it's Tuesday. There you go. That's why you're actually, you know, that's why it's doing that. And I think it really is important to kind of stamp your mark on it, actually. Yeah. That I'm actually at school, we have, ironically, we have quite a high number of students with diabetes. We have one in each year group. So I teach years 7 to 11, which is aged 11 up to age 16. And we have one in each year group, and we're doing next week some diabetes assemblies to educate the whole school. And there's another member of staff who has type 1 as well. So we're kind of coming out in force. And ironically, we're doing a bake sale, which when that was suggested to us, all of us with diabetes kind of went, oh, okay. I mean, obviously we can eat the cakes if we want, but we choose not to. So we're kind of trying to raise awareness, but I'm very concerned that when I talk about my students who have diabetes, I refer to them as students first because it's person-centered. But when it comes to me and talking about myself, I personally have no issue going, oh yes, I'm diabetic. But I think it's because of exactly what you said, Jodie. Like, it's just taking ownership, but also being aware that it's got to be person-centered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know there's probably lots of people that aren't offended by that term because it's so woven in, but as the leadership position that I am in, I choose to make sure I never use it, because I think it's an important point.
But it's empowerment as well, isn't it? And also it is about challenging those semantics or those kind of neuro-linguistic, little nuances that are in our language, and we go, oh, but that's what it's always been called. Well, okay, but it doesn't mean it has to stay that way. That I think it's important to have these conversations and kind of just challenge the perceptions around it, because if we're not shifting that, we're not putting the person at the center. Exactly. And then you can have all these sorts of judgments that are constantly made against us, which is not okay.
Exactly. Well, I'd like to open it up to the group. I am going to have to end right on time. I have a client at the top of the hour. So, because sometimes I like to go over, as my group knows. I would love to just, have all of you listening to anybody that wants to comment or question. You can raise your hand. You can type it in the chat, or I have more questions for Sarah, but I wanted to give you guys an opportunity. I always like it when we have group calls, when we have the time to have all our voices be heard. So anybody like to share or ask a question? Oh, yes. Thank you, Doug. Sarah, do you want to put the link to your book in the chat?
Oh, gosh. Sure. Now, this would mean that you're assuming that I'm really good.
Oh, wait a minute. I will do it because you already shared with me that that's not your tech superstar. So I've got it right here. No problem.
I'm so ashamed. Like, I'm nearly 43-year-old woman, and I can't, like, I look at a computer and it goes, no, hun, it's not going to work. I'm so sorry.
No, okay. But yeah. No, wait, Miss Sarah, we just talked about how shame is not necessary with diabetes. So you feeling shameful?
Oh no, but Jodie, I fully embrace my lack of technology. My husband just rolls his eyes at me. Yes, it does. Thank you, Lorna, you superstar. It does come up on an Amazon search, but thank you, Jodie.
Yes.
Very kind.
Yes. No,
I mean, I'm amazed I uploaded the thing to Kindle. Like, honestly, the fact it's even out there and I uploaded it is like celebration enough. I need to like lie down for a month or two that now I've done it.
Yeah. No, yeah, clearly you were called to write this because there's many people that need to hear it.
I'd like to think so. And you know what, though? It's made me think other people need to get their stories out. Like, it's just a lot. What's been lovely is that people have said, oh, finally, a book about diabetes that isn't just like either judgmental or do this and your blood sugar will be great. Like, because I'm not medically trained, I have made a point of saying, like, this book is not the answer to your prayers. It's not going to tell you everything, but it's just telling you one, kind of 40-something-year-old woman's journey, having had type 1 for 30-something years. And so that's why I think it's important to get it out there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of us that know each other, like Kathy and Lorna and Doug and Letha and Sue and Paula. We're all, and Amy, I know you're there, in the group, but I'd love to hear, I think there's a few of you that are with Sarah's group, if you'd like to share, just where you're calling from and how long you've had type 1. Any of you?
I'm one of Sarah's ladies. I'm Jackie, and I live in Scotland, and I've been diabetic, a type 1 with diabetes for 42 years.
42.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed as a 20-year-old. But yes, I am one of Sarah's fans. She knows I'm one of her fans, and she knows I'm one of her fans.
I love Jackie.
Hi.
So glad to have you here, Jackie. Nice to meet you. Thanks for saying hi. All right. Let's see. There's Gail, and then girls rule.
I love it. Gail's giving us the silent treatment.
Yeah, no, nothing from Gail. That's okay.
International Woman of Mystery, maybe. I don't know. It's
right. You know who Gail is, though?
I'm not going to lie, not without being on my group, not going by first names.
Sure.
Can you hear me? 4,000 members.
Oh, there we are. Gail. Yes. Hello.
Well, believe it or not, I'm driving, so I'm at a stoplight. So I'm in Anchorage, Alaska. I just joined the crew last week, had a little technical problem, but I was diagnosed in 2013, and it's been a nightmare. That's all I'm going to say, because I'm alone. I live alone. I don't have any help, and like I said in our meeting last week, I think I just live in fear. But I will have to say that I think I was taking way too much basil, and I'm cranking it down, not too fast. Can't do anything too fast. Don't know what it'll do to me. But so we'll see where this gets me, maybe to a better spot. That's my hope.
Gail, I'm so glad that you shared, and I am here to say there's definitely hope out there, because like I said, I feel like most type 1s have received not even half of the training that we need. And so when we're injecting a potentially lethal medication every day, it's pretty scary if you haven't been given the textbook to how to actually manage it properly. So I'm sorry it's been a nightmare, but you've found the group, and you should have received the How to Avoid the Roller Coaster Blood Sugar course as a free bonus for joining. Did you get that?
Yeah, I did, and I'm gonna listen to it again. It's weird because I started cranking down my basil in the middle of summer. I thought, well, maybe I'm taking too much, and then unfortunately my diabetic doctor got cancer and quit, and I went to another one in Alaska. It's just finding a doctor to write your prescriptions and get them to the pharmacy is a task in itself. But the guy that I saw a month ago said to me, because I wear a Dexcom, thank God, he said to me, I think maybe your basal might be a little high, because you keep your and then he talked about how long your insulin lasts. You're still going down, and I started thinking about that, because I have a little bit of education about it, not a heck of a lot, obviously. Started thinking about that. That's how I fell upon this web, the crew and all that stuff. And I think it's right. I think that was, I'm not going to say it's all the problems, but it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Taking too much basil.
It's a big deal.
It's screwing up every time you give yourself a shot. You're not, the whole thing is just like, wow.
Yeah. Well, yes. Gail, there's a talk I did in the crew just a couple of weeks ago about the 5 stages of, I don't want to call it diabetes mastery. I don't like that word, but I
saw that.
Yeah. Right. So we need to learn how to be confident in setting our basal. We need to learn how to be confident in knowing how to dose at meal times beyond carb counting. We need to be confident in knowing how to avoid lows and avoid highs. And then we need to also, number 5 is be confident to use critical thinking, which means doing things differently today than we did yesterday, right? Those are the essentials that when you really can grasp those, my goal for all of you is to have much better numbers, less fear, more empowerment, that you're actually running your diabetes from a place of empowerment and education and confidence, not a place of overwhelm and what I don't know what I'm doing. And, you know, I need to wait to see my doctor to figure out how to do this, right? My goal for everybody is to have that paradigm shift of like, I know how to do this and this is how I'm going to fix it, right? Because diabetes has to be critically managed every day. So we can't wait for most people that work with me privately use their doctor for scripts and labs, period. Because we need them for that. But so I want to inspire you, Gail, to know that when you get more, you know, more knowledgeable in those 5 areas, your life will blossom.
Yeah, well, you know, I'd like to live. I need to get some kind of not control. I need to navigate my blood sugars differently because what I'm doing is definitely not working.
Yeah, it's a journey. So I'm glad that you're here on the journey with us, Gail. It's nice to meet you.
Sorry to talk so long. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Gail. Girls Rule, would you like to share? Oh, we can't hear you. You're still muted.
Oh, I'd like to get that name off there because I haven't figured out how to do it.
Oh, you go up in the right corner of your picture and there's 3 dots.
Oh, okay.
Click on the 3 dots and then you go rename.
Oh, perfect. I'll do that after we chat. Okay, I'm yeah, because it really gets me in trouble when I'm on Zoom. Oh,
Yeah.
No. My name is Lola and I'm from Calgary. And I have been with you for, maybe about a year or so following you.
Oh, yes, I know your name now. See, I just changed it for you. Do you see that?
Oh, thank you. Anyways, so it's been 32 years. I see my doctor, like you say, just to get prescriptions.
Uh-huh.
And I keep telling him about you. And I'm like, you have helped me so much. My sugar levels in the last year have been incredible.
Oh,
Incredible. So,
good.
and I keep telling everyone, geez, you gotta join this group.
Yes.
Because when I started out, it was not a happy time. I was actually getting ready for a marathon. I'll be quick. And my first husband, as soon as I found out I was diabetic, he told me, hide the needles, don't tell anyone.
Oh.
So I lived with him for another year or so. And then I went, I can't do this. He kept calling me a drug addict. I'm sorry.
No, Lola, that's awful. We all know you're not a drug addict.
I couldn't, well, he's a RCMP. So for him, it's nobody used needles unless you were a drug addict. Mm-hmm. Left him, best thing I've ever done. And now meeting you and doing your courses, I can't tell you how happy I am and how in good health I am, even being the way I am.
Lola, what a great testimonial for like what is possible when you get the right support and education.
Because
That's
I
what
never
we
had,
all deserve. Yes.
Yeah. I never had any until you, and they sent me to so many specialists. And most of it was honestly, it was hogwash.
Yeah.
For the last 30 years, it's like, you guys don't even know what the hell you're talking about.
No. Yeah.
So anyways, thank you.
Oh, Lola, I've seen your name, of course. I know you've been in the program, but first of all, of course, we didn't have Lola, so I didn't know who you were. And now I see your name, I'm like, oh, good. Yeah. I mean, there's so many people in the crew that only watch the recordings that I've never met. So so nice to meet you. Yeah, great.
And
great.
you have to write another book. Because I just finished it. I got to the end and went, really?
Oh, you read Hunger?
Yes.
Oh, well, there's a group. Are you in the book group?
No.
Oh yeah, Lorna started a book group with people in the crew that are actually reading my book. So Lorna, if you want to reach out, you guys can message each other on the crew website.
Perfect.
Lorna, I know Sue's reading it and Amy's reading it. Yeah. Well, but FYI, Sarah, my book has nothing to do with diabetes.
Amazing. I love it.
You're going to love it.
Yeah, I was living in Thailand and working at this health spa. It was my first job out of med school because I've always been an out of the box thinker. And I was like, I can't get a job like at a hospital. I'm like, I'll get a job at a health spa in Thailand. So I lived my first year out of med school in Thailand, and I blogged. This was in 2008. And so I think I hadn't joined Facebook yet. You know, the community that we have now that's so tight wasn't then. So people were blogging, you know, so I was like, well, I think I'll just blog about my life over here so everybody can, you know, read of what I'm up to. And that's why I did it, because I just wanted to stay connected to people. And my friends and family were like flipping out. They're like, oh my God, you're such a good writer, Jody. This is ridiculous. And my mom cried at one entry. My dad called me another one. He's like, did you write that? He goes, that was amazing. Did you write that? And this one friend of mine would like send me emails every week. I posted a blog post with all these exclamation points about how much she got from it. And I was like, she's like, you've got to write a book. And it was the year that Oprah was interviewing Elizabeth Gilbert for her Eat, Pray, Love book. And so literally I get motivated by big visions and big dreams. I was like, oh, well, I mean, if Oprah likes Eat, Pray, Love, she should love my book. So I literally wrote my book like, okay, it's kind of Eat, Pray, Love. I'm a single woman traveling the world, talking about my life. Hopefully it's kind of funny. Hopefully it's kind of adventurous and, you know, lots of life lessons. And I have pursued Oprah many times, just FYI. And I actually met her and talked to her about my book. And I've become friends with her friend, Gail. And I've given Gail 2 copies of my book. I've sent 20 handwritten notes inside the front cover of 20 books to Oprah Studios in Chicago, as well as O Magazine in New York. And now I live on Maui and Oprah has a house here. So I will run into Oprah at the store, and this to be continued. So
wow, that's amazing. Slip a copy of my book in there too, Dr. Jody, please.
Oh yes, yes.
I think I'm a bit too sweary for Oprah. Maybe I think I'm quite bad. My grandmother Joan would have been absolutely horrified and washed my mouth out with soap and water.
Yeah. But well, Oprah would see your heart though. I think that she would.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So you're good.
Oh, good. I do love Oprah. So pass on my love for her, please.
Well, I've yet to go like find where she lives, but I know it's just, I don't know. Maui's not a big island.
Stalk her. Yeah, no, stalk her. Just absolutely stalk her.
Yeah, actually, I met her at this conference, and I have to go in 3 minutes, but we will wrap up. I met her at this conference where I was living in Sun Valley, Idaho in 2011. And it's a big wig conference where all these big names come every year to kind of like, oh, what project are you working on? You know, it's like Mark Zuckerberg comes and Bill Gates comes and Warren Buffett comes and like the president of Italy was there and Oprah was there. And I think they're all just like on vacation sharing ideas to make the next big deal or something. I don't know. Anyways, so I randomly ran into her at this conference and I thought, oh my God, she comes here every year. This is going to be so easy. I'm going to finish my book and next year I'll just hand it to her. So I have sat in that lobby several years in a row and stopped. And actually the head of security called me one year and asked me to not return and said that I wasn't welcome in the lobby anymore. So of course, you know, the next day I sat outside with my baseball hat on and I just altered my plan a little bit, but that's how now I've met Gail 3 times because she comes every year and I know she goes to the ice cream shop at 3:00 every day. So I sit outside of the ice cream shop and I've talked to Gail several times and, you know, then COVID hit and then I was here this year, but anyways. Okay. So here is to being a superhero. Here is to you sharing your life with the world and your lessons, and to all of us for taking the time. Okay, whoever is making all that noise in the background, let's stop that, please. Well, and here's to, you know, being human, right? Getting messy and making noise on a Zoom call. It's all fine. Okay, so let's see, where did Sarah go? Okay, there we go. Asked to unmute Sarah. All right, so I just really want everybody to take a second to honor yourself. Like we talked about, we are people first. We have this incredible challenge that we get to manage every day, and that you're not alone, that there is hope, there is inspiration. I like to bring another level of, I trust life. I think that we're all here to grow and help each other and learn. And the best way to learn is from challenges. And so I choose to see the world that way. I choose to see that we are all meant to get this. We're all meant to grow from it. We're all meant to become stronger. And Sarah, I just honor you so much for taking the time to be with us today and to share your story and to create your group. And I'm excited that you and I are now connected.
Thank you. And I genuinely cannot thank you enough. It's been beyond a pleasure and a real honor. So, and I just, I feel very connected with everything you said. And I really, really do thank you for that. You bring hope. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Wonderful. Okay, everybody. And if, Sarah, we can connect over email. I'd love to hear more about your group for people, so I can, let people know about your group, and then I can share with you information about my group if any of your people are interested. So
fantastic. That would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. So I honor all of you for taking this time, and I will see all of you crew members on our next meeting. Is that today? Or is that tomorrow? That's tomorrow. I have to look at my calendar. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. And to you. Thank you and goodbye. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.